So that will go just above your head. Very sorry for that. And that should be good. We'll be starting shortly. I just have to make sure everybody's seated. Thank you, bye. See, we still have some.
No, I'm not set for
Bonnie, table for two. Your table's ready. Bonnie, table for two. Amanda, table for two. Your table's ready. Amanda, table for two. Bonnie, table for two. Your table's ready. Bonnie, table for two. Amanda, your table's ready. Amanda, your table's ready.
I think we should be alright. I think I'll sneak back. Like, pretty alternative. No. Okay, so just let me do it. So I have 3 words of welcome. I'll call it Peter. And then he'll introduce you. And then I'll let you guys do your talk. I have a few closing comments. Oh, already? Okay, that was not my notes, but that's more than fine. As soon as you're done, I have a few closing comments. Just easier. About 5 minutes. And sit here. I'll just pop aside. Terribly sorry to bug you guys again. Just want to make sure that he gets the shots he's looking for. Last time, I promise.
Bonnie, table for two. Your table's ready. Bonnie, table for two.
how many words are slides of the other side?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the launch of Revisiting English Grammar by Johnny Geddes and Rosemarie Finlay. To introduce our authors and to say a little bit more about the book, I would now like to call up Professor Peter St. John, the Earl of Orkney, and a senior partner at Heartland Associates, a Winnipeg-based publisher of award-winning books. So, Peter.
Thank you for those kind words. Of course, this is one book that got away from us. We'd love to have published it, but they were too clever for us. They managed to avoid us and do it much more sensibly, and cheaply. Once we get someone who wants to do a book, we put our claws into them, suck them dry of all their... I'm carrying on. It's lovely to see everybody. Welcome to all of you. Can you hear me at the back? Those of you in the far bit there? I have the happy privilege of introducing our people, our guests tonight, our authors, and revisiting English grammar is the object of tonight's exercise, and it's going to resonate a tiny bit with some of the professors in the audience here tonight who have struggled with students in the English language, yes, I can see, for many, many years, and wondered when we were going to give up speaking English and try something else. By the late 1980s, and by the way, I taught in the University of Manitoba from 1963 until 1998. That's about 37 years, I guess. But by the time I got to the late 80s, I found an increasing problem with students writing really bad English. A lot of it looked as if it was done phonetically, instead of with a dictionary. And I decided that students, if they wrote like this, were going to be badly handicapped in the real world out there. And I started a personal crusade to improve the English of my students. They didn't like it. And to make things even worse, I found an article in the Globe and Mail that buttressed my thoughts and ideas. A grave mistake in teaching writing, written by a social worker about the problems of teaching his daughter to write in English. I've got 10 copies just to leave for anybody who wants one, who's having trouble and can't afford the book tonight. But I used that for years, and I found it was sort of helpful, In the 1990s, my campaign to improve written English involved this Globe article very much, and it was quite a lot of fun. I actually gave students the privilege of getting a C or a D and said, you can rewrite it as many times as you like until you get the mark you think you deserve. It meant I did a lot of marking, but I think along the way some of them improved their English. It was probably a good thing to have done, because finally, of course, Johnny Geddes arrived in my class and spent the whole summer school, trying to correct my English. Typically, of course. I want to talk about the authors. I haven't come to talk about myself, but what a wonderful thing that we have finally associated with the University of Manitoba, a grammar that helps you to write proper English. And to bring two people together like this to have written it is a splendid idea. And I think it's going to be a great help to our grandchildren looking around the room. It looks like grandchildren rather than children. Is that a comment on our age? I don't know. Authors Rosemarie Finlay and Johnny Geddes are respectively a colleague of mine at the University of Manitoba and a former student of mine. One of those summer schools where everything gels and comes together, and you have a wonderful time, and you don't know why it happened, but you're really glad it did. That's what Johnny did to my class one summer. It was terrific fun. It was very, very nice. Rosemarie is a senior instructor in German and Slavic studies at St. Paul's College in the University of Manitoba. She has specialized in 19th and 20th century German writers. She's an expert on the poetry of Goethe. I think she even does windows, don't you? Stained glass windows. What a wonderful sort of mixture of things. And she also teaches German as a second language. And she is an influential and popular presence on the campus, and especially around the St. John's, St. Paul's area. Johnny Geddes is Belfast Irish, if I may say so, and has had a love affair with writing from the beginning of his life. I guess it was an escape from his father being a surgeon. If your father's a cardiovascular, whatever it is, surgeon, you're going to want to do something good and different. And of course, Johnny came over here at 13. He went to St. John's Ravenscourt School. He started subsequently, after going to school and getting a master's in journalism at Buckingham University, started by Thatcher, I gather tonight, by Margaret Thatcher. Buckingham, let's all go to Buckingham University. He started a company called TextVet for improving the technical writing of companies and of their business with other people. Such a good idea when you think about it. He was awarded the commendation by the chief of the Thames Valley Police. A very exciting thing. The importance of writing good English is such that in this article I want to read you one sentence, one little tiny paragraph in which the writer, Robert D. Cates, says, "Recently, one of my clients, a promising trial lawyer, received 300 applications for a single articling position. I asked him how he would reduce them to a short list, and he replied, 'My secretary discards applications that contain spelling or grammatical errors. That gets rid of half of them.'" Wow. We've declared war on bad English. We insist on proper English and grammar. Excellent. What a tremendous privilege and pleasure for me to welcome these two to come up and tell you about their book and to tell you about the revolution they have planned. Johnny Geddes, Rosemarie Finlay. Thank you.
It's not an easy task following the Earl of Orkney, but I will try. My name is Moti Shojania, and I'm honored and privileged to be here for my colleague Rosemarie Finlay. And I've met Johnny Geddes only through his manuscript when I was looking at it in rough draft at Rosemarie's request, and that he's a lively, witty writer, writing with a light touch was obvious. And when I met him, without our being introduced, he walked into St. Paul's, and I recognized him immediately. But it seems appropriate to start tonight with the opening lines of Cabaret, which opened last night at MTC, and which I hope you'll all rush to see. Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. So welcome to Revisiting English Grammar. I want to say that we don't really need grammar if all we ever do is speak, because we pretty well master the language of our community, our family, by the time we're 3 years old. We stop saying, "me want this," by about 4, but by 4 years old, we're masters of our spoken language. We really need grammar when we want to write and show our thinking. And as a teacher of English literature, like Peter, I have also despaired of my students and their lack of knowledge of grammar. And what I want to say about the importance of this book is that it really has been conceived out of love of students. Rosemarie is a passionate teacher and a compassionate teacher, because one can stand in front of a classroom and teach what one knows and share what one knows, but she has compassion for the difficulty in learning this material. And so what she has done is, with Johnny, collaborated to provide the kind of guide that students need when they're learning a new language with new rules of word order in the sentence and verbs and adverbs and conjugations and all those things, that will help give them the confidence to follow through on their dream of mastering another language. One starts with a great deal of enthusiasm, and last year, in my job as the Dean of Studies, following Rosemarie's lead actually, she was Dean of Studies at St. Paul's College. Last year she changed classrooms, and I wondered if it was too small for the number of students that she had. She says, "Oh, everybody enrolls in a German course thinking it'll be easy. We'll lose quite a few of them along the way." Because one starts with this ambition to master a second language. One has a dream of reading Goethe if it's German, reading Dante in the original if it's Italian. One wants to order elegantly and fluently at a restaurant, march along the streets and be mistaken for a native. That's what one wants. And of course, 3 weeks into a course, voluntary withdrawal is staring you in the face. So what is it that these students are missing is confidence in how rules are constructed, how arbitrary those rules are. And one needs a compassionate hand to show how you can use your knowledge of English to help you learn a new language. And so this will be of invaluable use, not only to the lucky students that will be in Rosemarie's class, but also to all of us teaching at the university. I'm hoping our library will buy several copies so I can put one on reserve for my students. I'm hoping that we can keep it in the faculty lounge for our colleagues to get inspired to share some of these tricks with students. Most of us who are in the professoriate learned to write by reading a lot and by catching on to how it's done. Our students are not so privileged. They are not reading as much, though everybody is reading blogs and writing blogs. The way that modern writing goes is pretty well based on the vernacular. And so written communication that has to persuade somebody to accept an argument, to vote for the way you want them to vote, to endorse an environmental program or to reject one, that requires powerful thinking, clarity of thought, and for that you need grammar. So grammar is, how does one say it? It's the boat in which we travel across the ocean of the unknown, of where we're starting from the shore with what we know to where we want to go. It will help students of German, and certainly of students in all the disciplines at the university, have the confidence to have faith in their own thinking. And what we want to do at university and at every level of education is to give our students intellectual confidence, to help them to become the best that they can be. I can't imagine a better guide than what Rosemarie and Johnny have produced. And Peter has said something about Rosemarie and her work with stained glass. She's donated a tremendous gift to the college, a beautiful stained glass window, which we are hanging in the college. But just so that you know that she has a real flair for enjoying life, she was also champion in women's fencing in Western Canada as an undergraduate. Thank you very much, Rosemarie.
Well, thank you ever so much, you two, for that generous assessment and splendid introduction. And I am honoured to be here tonight. I am especially grateful to be back in what had been, once upon a time, my hometown and home country. I've been out of it for 18 years. However did that happen? How unfortunate. But anyway, here I am, and I would like to express a wonderful, wonderful thank you to you all for coming out on a cold night, and a Friday night as well, to hopefully be warmed by something as heartwarming as grammar. Well, we'll certainly see what we can do for you. I think any good storyline requires conflict, and as we know in conflict, there has to be a problem leading to a resolution. And I'm happy to say that in our book, the origins of REG, or Revisiting English Grammar, is steeped in revolution. Just to give you some background, my wife Sarah and I emigrated to Florida from England in 2011. And I was setting up my business. I transplanted it from England. And I think it was in December that year, wasn't it, when Rosemarie, a long-term great family friend, sent me an email, and it was lovely to hear from her. And it was especially great to hear that she was asking me to climb on board as a co-author on this wonderful idea for a grammar guide. And of course I said yes. What sort of idiot wouldn't? And I had no reason to fear grammar. Words were my life. I lived every day. My livelihood revolved around English, around grammar. And I remember I replied instantaneously. I said, of course, thank you, thank you. And then about an hour after I sent the email, Sarah looked at me, and I had gone as white as a sheet. And she asked, what's wrong? And I think wives, mothers and sisters know when we lie. And I said, no, I'm all right. So this huge mug of herbal tea appeared, and I consumed it slowly, and then she asked me if I was warmed. And I said yes. I got away with that one. I woke up the next day, and the coldness in my chest was even worse. What could ever be doing it? As I said, I'm a wordsmith. I live in the discipline. Grammar is what makes me tick. And it was at that point that I realised the coldness in my heart was something I had no right to have. But if I was experiencing it, what then would a university entrant be experiencing? So that was the first indicator that we were getting onto something big. I had a little voice in the back of my mind. Don't worry, I'm not too crazy. But it said, careful, Johnny boy, this is like Pandora's box or black magic. If you're going to get involved with this, you've got to take it deadly seriously. So that was the first important indicator about grammar for me. The second important indicator occurred about a month later, because I think I'd started sending you the idea for the skeleton. And I'm also a guitarist. I play guitar avidly. I have been for over 20 years. And you'll see the relevance to grammar in a moment, I promise you. I was practicing guitar in Florida in January with the windows open. I'm rubbing it in. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. And I split 2 strings. I broke 2 guitar strings. And that has never happened to me before. So I went to the bedroom and fetched 2 more. And it was as I was restringing and tuning my guitar that I was looking out over the balcony. And I had this wonderful tableau of a street scene. And I just counted. At first I was being absent-minded. I was going dan, 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 tuning my guitar. And I looked down and I saw 20 people. And of the 20, about 15 were absorbed in these handheld devices. And they were completely off their trolleys. They were off in electronica land. And of the remaining 5, there were 2 sets of lady dog walkers and a little old man who was looking up at me, wondering what I was doing. But one of those electronic addicts, a young man, walked out in front of a car, and by the grace of the fates, he wasn't killed. So I was horrified as well as fascinated. But he began berating the vehicle that had almost slain him with expletives, cursing it for getting in his way. And it was that point that I had an epiphany. I realised that gone was the idea of taking what I had been given in 1978 when I started my scholastic career, which I'd been given a book called The Art of English. And if I still have it, the covers have long fallen away. I don't even think there were illustrations in it. But that was the old way of introducing grammar to children. And I realised by looking at these technological people that we had to take the fight. I hope I don't sound too belligerent. We had to take the movement up to a new plane. So that was really when we realised, and I did say to you, it's no longer about the old way. Now, I run the Text Vet, a composition enhancing and editing business, and we do proofreading, and we do resumes and technical authoring, but I had noticed, and I hope I don't sound ageist, that especially young people were having problems. And I'm sure Rosemarie and other faculty members at any University of Manitoba, any university in 2014 or 2011 as it had been back then, would bear this out. Young people were having serious trouble with grammar. So we had the problem. And of course, in recent years, it's a recent phenomenon. I think I was fortunate in that I may have been the last of that generation that managed to get away with it. Or maybe it was the fact I was at SJR, and their levels, or their standards were so high. But certainly the average is such. In recent years, students starting their university careers have been showing a very poor grasp of grammar, English grammar. It's very easy to poke fingers at the school system, and I'm doing this only partially. Something must have malfunctioned, not for the teachers, but in the directives that were forcing the teachers to follow protocols. And early on, we recognised there were 3 types of students. There were those with good grammar skills, thankfully, who could do well to be refreshed by our book. Then there were those who were struggling with grammar and who clearly needed our help. And then, now this was mystifying for me. I'm not sure if it were you or if you had shown me, but apparently there were students who I think had never even heard of grammar at all, or were behaving as if they had never heard of grammar. And that was most perturbing. So before us was the challenge, and a gauntlet had been thrown down. We had to present grammar in a new way. We had to de-demonise it. It was like raising the Titanic. We had a smouldering dragon at the back of a cave, and that was the popular image for most of those who even knew what grammar was, especially in my vintage. And the old method of teaching grammar, which I had known in the late 70s and the 80s, and to a certain degree at SJR in the late 80s, that was certainly part of the problem. It was no longer relevant. We were dealing with a new tableau, a new milieu. And so I did a bit of reconnaissance. I went out and I looked, and I invite you to look at what McNally Robinson might have in the way of grammar guides. There are many available. What occurred to me, and Rosemarie agrees, that something radically different was clearly required. We deduced that the ideal grammar book should be user-friendly, compact, entertaining whilst it taught. Now this would be a key to the enterprise. But to hark back to the image, it had to present grammar's image in an entirely new way. So that was the challenge. So our solution was that we would compose something that met 3 essential criteria. Number one, our grammar had to be a technical manual. I'm a technical writer. I was trained as such after I founded the Text Vet. So with a grammar guide being a user guide, we had to have something that troubled people could dip into. So if you want to find out about semicolons, go to the index, and there it is on page 71. That would be one layer of the work. The second layer was really born from necessity, in that something like a technical manual would be too dead, flat and dry. So we had to have something with a bit of zip, a bit of flesh, a bit of humour. Something that could be read from beginning to end, and maybe even on a really rainy Sunday afternoon as a push. So we come to the third aspect of the idea behind our book, was that it be democratically malleable. So the students themselves would shape the prototype, because we gave the prototype to volunteer waves of students. Or is it waves of volunteer students? I'm not too sure myself. Oh dear, I shouldn't have said that. But we would then take their feedback and adjust the trajectory. So we would have a prototype, and it would go through several versions. And I think ultimately we went to Mark 5 after all the tweaking. So this was absolutely essential. It was really the people's book. I hope that doesn't sound too either falsely magnanimous or theatrical, but they made their own book through us as the mediums. Was it media? Oh dear. So that was the solution. Just to go into the technical aspects that I touched on, by the way, those are two of my manuals that I had done about 10 years ago, just to show you how prosaic manuals can look. We did adopt a technical author's approach. I had said to Rosemarie that, why don't we treat grammar as if she were a bacon slicer or a fridge or a computer program? It sounds comical, but the idea was that we had the revolution. We stood back from what the other grammar authors were doing. And what we wanted to do was find a ground zero and just try and for a moment disremember everything that we had known, just to get the perspectivistic aspect of knowing what it might like, or what it might be like not to know what grammar is. So we realised that it would be something that could be documented for the benefit of all users, regardless of their skill level, as per the 3 golden rules that I picked up when I was, which I picked up. Oh dear, when I was taking my training as a technical writer. Number one, the pages had to be easy on the eye. Now this is really down to allowing a lot of white space and not having crushing text, so there could be illustrations. It's really designed to help you locate what you're looking for quickly. Further to that would be rule number 2, that no pages can be alike. So this is really down to ease of navigability. So if a Venn diagram is on page 58 and later on something references page 58, you can go, that's the one with the Venn diagram, flip back, there you are. The third aspect, I would say, would be most crucial, in that it was down to tone. We were really playing with fire in my mind. So I realised that our tone had to assume absolutely no foreknowledge whatsoever, i.e. we had to pretend the students knew absolutely nothing about grammar, even if they did. And yet, we had to run this or strike this against a very, very precarious balance. It is very easy to patronise someone, especially an adult, when you are taking them through something, a process or grammar. We really had to find the right tone there. This brought us on to the entertainment aspect, to make it fun, so that in the event that we were being patronising, it might not have to matter. And I hope we weren't patronising. I don't think we were in the feedback. No, good. So we had to breathe life into our work. Our revolutionary approach was that the content had to be directed by the need to rivet the reader's attention. So my vision, and Rosemarie agreed, that we should have something that could be read from page 1 to page 180. And it would not just be the so-called nerds and saddos that would do it, it would be accessible at all levels. So revisiting English grammar would be much more than just a manual. We really made it real. We gave it this entertainment flesh, if you will, by inserting the langs. Now, the langs are cartoon characters. They are guideposts. They are the little people. There are 4 of them. And for instance, there's a little chap called Infolang. He's the first one you meet. I'm not going to spoil it too much for you, but he helps you identify with a rule of grammar. And then Clara Lang is lovely. She clarifies it for you. And it's great that we have these because they're not patronising. Although they are fun, they're not infantile. And also, they help break up the page to make it easy on the eye. And further to that, we realised we had to show the various rules of grammar in amusing contexts. So, in light of having the Langs, I deduced that we should have something a bit more adult. Clean, though, don't worry. But it was, I'm a horror writer and a science fiction writer. And one thing that I'm very proud of, I have to say guardedly, is I have a very dark sense of humour. I've got a great sense of black comedy and gallows humour. So I thought, why don't we elucidate or have jokes around the various rules of grammar that we're trying to illustrate, and have something that is risque, that pushes the envelope, and if the people are shocked, it'll be the wrong sort of people, or the right sort of people to shock. The Sunday school picnic packers, we can do without them. But if they want to come back later and read, that's good. And then we realised we still needed to keep things light, friendly and full of variety, especially with me doing a lot of the writing. So we really got down to brass tacks and started showing grammars working well in fun and memorable situations. And this really brought us on to the capping aspect, which is the democratic aspect. On the screen you can see a picture of some of the feedback letters. We read every letter and responded with due diligence. There was wave after wave after wave of volunteer students. I think we were certainly in triple figures. And what I found was Rosemarie would read the letters, and then she would relay them down to me. She would send them down in an envelope, and I was down in St. Petersburg, and I would receive these huge wadges of letters. It was great fun. And I had this chart by my desk, and I was able to keep score, I was able to keep track. So if 5 people didn't like page 50, but one had a problem with page 51, of course I would read all for page 50 and all for, the one for page 51 with equal sincerity. But after about a month or two, I realised that as a good rule of thumb, even though I still read each one, and I know that you did, the idea was if 5 people have a problem with one page and one has a problem with another, usually the one person is down to idiosyncrasies. I can't please everyone, I do try, I hope I'm pleasing you. But that was the democratic aspect. We were able to adjust the trajectory of the prototype through 5 versions to really tweak it and produce the effects. So in late last year, we had the final version, and not only that, we had an attendant movement. The internet support has been great. As much as I've slagged off technology and modernity in the future, without the internet support and the great ability to transmit information, I don't think we could have had lit as many fires to spread the great word. And as of date, I think we've got 3,500 Facebook likes, and that's in less than 2 months going. One of my younger friends in St. Petersburg, he's a nice fellow, he's about 23, he said, by the way, John, that's nice. I said, is it? Okay. I didn't know. I don't know these things. Maybe I'm getting a bit too old, I don't know. But the ebook release has actually preceded the print release that we're doing tonight, and it's taken off greatly here. But I found out in South Africa it's taken off, which is a great boon, of course. And also on the internet, the bloggers are mentioning REG, reg, I know, the acronym, regulation, therefore stuffiness and framework. But revisiting English grammar is really blossoming into what we envisioned, that it help. It has to help. The revolution is a peaceful one. It's to help the people revolt against their own misgivings of the bad old grammar. I would like to draw your attention to this quotation by one of my favourite science fiction writers, Aldous Huxley. He wrote, "Technological progress has merely provided us with more efficient means for going backwards." Well, in view of that, I would like to gear this towards my final point, which is that there were and remain 3 essential players in our game. First and foremost, there's grammar. Now, grammar is, and always has been, it's like a Platonic pure form. It's like a triangle. People whom I've talked to have said grammar is being killed. And I have to say to them, grammar is immortal. It's a form of a deity, almost. It's not grammar that is being slaughtered, it's our grip on it. So grammar is the virtually indestructible entity. It is inflexible, but somehow it still manages to embrace the future. It opens up its dictionaries to welcome terms such as to friend, to unfriend, to Google. So it is trying at least. It's a one-way street, it seems. Then we have ourselves, people, yes. Now we haven't changed, at least not innately, in many thousands of years. We now react to good and bad things in much the same way as people 1,000 years ago would have known to react to good and bad things. Only in the way that our societal developments and social systems have changed have we changed. So we've been enabled to acquire greater access to wisdom and better living. So we have two players there. Who then is the final player? And who might be the true culprit behind a poor grasp of grammar? Well, I'm afraid it is modernity, often confused with young people. I often defend young people. Young people are too often put in front of firing squads when it comes to bad grammar, and I'm not having any of it. It is not them. Really, the generation gap is only partially responsible for the grammar problem. But it's not so much the generation, it's the gap. Yes. But for an accident of birth, there I could have gone and have been struggling with modernity and grammar now. So we have to remain mindful that we live in the Silicon Age, where information is just thundering past, quickly, furiously, giving us precious little time to think through its various diverse electronic channels. And so it's really down to corporations and the corpo speak. Corporations' respect for grammar is really compromised by greed and a need to play into a culture of convenience. Really, this texting, emailing, twittering, what have you, all the trappings. I will put it on the blame on the doorstep of advertisers. A lot of the advertisers are my age or older, old enough to know better. And they have largely created this new speak, this awful swampy morass that confuses youngsters especially, just in the name of making